Most families spend $200 every single month on protein. Chicken, beef, beans, protein powder, a cycle that never ends. Meanwhile, Amish families spend zero, not because they're rationing, because they installed a system one March afternoon that feeds them 52 weeks a year. No store runs, no price anxiety, no dependency. This is not frugal living. This is systems thinking. You're driving to the grocery store every single week, filling the cart with chicken breasts at $4.99 a pound, stocking the freezer with ground beef, throwing cans of black beans into the basket because you read somewhere that plant protein is cheaper, then buying protein powder because the beans don't feel like enough. You're spending $50 one week, $80 the next, sometimes $100 when you stock up. And every month, the total climbs. The portions shrink. The prices don't reverse. You're trapped in a cycle that never builds equity. You're renting your family's protein security from a system designed to keep you dependent. Think about it. Meanwhile, Amish families in Pennsylvania and Ohio are walking to their woodlots in March, harvesting 2 to 3 pounds of fresh mushrooms every single week. Shiitake in the fall, oyster mushrooms in the spring, lion's mane in the summer, wine caps in July. 52 weeks a year, $0 spent, no inflation anxiety. No supply chain disruptions, no panic when chicken hits $6 a pound or beans double overnight. They installed the system once, in March, and it's been feeding them for 5, 6, 7 years straight. Here's what most people miss. You're not overspending because you're careless. You're paying for a problem your backyard could solve. This is not about mushroom foraging. This is not about hunting in the woods hoping something edible appears. This is about installing a protein production system that works while you sleep. A living infrastructure that turns dead logs into food. And it starts in March. Not April, not May, March. Here's the reality. They think mushrooms are a summer farmer's market luxury, a $12 per pound boutique ingredient you buy once for a special recipe and never again. Or they think mushroom growing is some complex indoor laboratory operation, sterile chambers, mist timers, humidity domes, lab coats. That's not what we're building. We're building a backyard protein system based on the same log cultivation methods Amish communities have refined over 150 years. Simple, outdoor, repeatable, scalable from 4 logs to 40. And the entry point is March, when the temperatures are cool, when the spring moisture is reliable, when the mycelium can colonize without competing against summer heat and contamination. Think about it. You plant a bare root apple tree in February, and in 3 years, you're harvesting apples. That's generational thinking. That's infrastructure. Mushroom logs work the same way, except the timeline is faster. You inoculate logs in March of year 1. By fall, you're harvesting your first flush of shiitake. By year 2, you've got a full calendar of production. 4 species, 12 months of coverage, a system that produces 50 to 100 pounds of fresh mushrooms annually for 5 to 7 years from one March afternoon of setup work. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people freeze when they hear this, not from the cold, from uncertainty. They're staring at a pile of logs in their backyard, holding a bag of mushroom spawn, and the voice in their head is screaming that this won't work, that dead wood can't possibly feed a family, that they're going to waste money and time on some permaculture fantasy. I know that feeling. The first time I drilled holes into an oak log and hammered in shiitake plugs, I was convinced I'd just ruined perfectly good firewood. But I didn't stop. I sealed the plugs with wax. I stacked the logs in the shade. I watered them once a week. And 9 months later, I harvested 2 pounds of shiitake from a single log. That log is still producing today. Every March you wait is a year of protein production you will never harvest. A tree planted this February bears fruit in year 3. A tree planted next February does not. That's a year of lost harvest. The same law applies here. Logs inoculated in March of this year will fruit by fall. Logs you put off until next March will not. That's 12 months of production you'll never get back. That's another $2,400 you'll keep spending at the grocery store. That's another year of dependence when you could be building independence. This system is built on one core principle: diversification across time. You're not planting a single mushroom species and hoping it feeds you. You're installing 4 species that fruit in different seasons, creating a 12-month production calendar: shiitake, oyster, lion's mane, wine cap. Each one fills a different window. Each one covers a gap the others leave. Together, they turn your backyard into a year-round protein source. Let's break it down. Shiitake is your fall and spring producer. High protein density, meaty texture, grows on oak, maple, and beech logs. It fruits twice a year, September through November, March through May. You soak the logs for 24 hours, and within a week, you've got mushrooms pushing through the bark. Each log gives you half a pound to a full pound per flush. 2 flushes a year. That's 1 to 2 pounds per log annually. Multiply that by 20 logs, and you're looking at 20 to 40 pounds of shiitake every year. Oyster mushrooms are your spring, fall, and winter coverage. Fast colonization. Cold-tolerant strains that fruit even in November and December when everything else is dormant. They grow on almost any hardwood: poplar, birch, maple, cottonwood. You can inoculate them on the same day as shiitake, and they'll start producing within 6 to 8 months. Oyster flushes are abundant. One log can give you 2 to 3 pounds in a single flush, and because they fruit in the shoulder seasons in winter, they fill the gaps shiitake leaves behind. Lion's mane is your summer and early fall specialist. It thrives on oak. It has medicinal properties that support cognitive function and immune health. The texture is closer to crab or lobster than traditional mushrooms. It fruits from July through September, covering the window when shiitake is dormant and oyster slows down. Each log produces 1 to 2 pounds per year, not the highest yielder, but it fills the summer gap and adds culinary and medicinal diversity to your system. Wine cap mushrooms are the game changer for scalability. They don't need logs. They grow on wood chips. You can install a wine cap bed along your garden paths, in your mulched areas, under your fruit trees. You inoculate the wood chips with spawn in March, and by June, you're harvesting. Wine caps fruit heavily in summer, 10 to 20 pounds per 100 square feet of bed. They spread naturally. Once established, they re-inoculate themselves. You're not managing logs, you're managing a living mulch that produces food. Now here's the calendar proof. January through December. Shiitake fruits in March, April, and May. Then again in September, October, and November. Oyster mushrooms fruit in April, May, and June. Then September, October, November, and even December if you're running cold-tolerant strains. Lion's mane covers July, August, and early September. Wine caps dominate June, July, and August. You've got 12 months of production from 4 species. No gaps, no dead zones. No months where you're back at the grocery store buying protein because your system went dormant. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people hear food forest or mushroom cultivation, and they plant everything at once. A chaotic mix of species without understanding the sequence, the timing, or the failure modes. That's not a protein system. That's a science experiment that collapses within 2 years. And the collapse happens for predictable reasons. Here's what most people miss. Common failure number 1, summer inoculation. Someone reads about mushroom logs in June, gets excited, orders spawn, inoculates in July when it's 85 degrees and humid. The plugs cook. The mycelium dies before it colonizes. Contamination explodes. The logs rot instead of fruiting. Summer is the worst possible time to start this system. March is the window. Cool temperatures between 40 and 60 degrees. Reliable spring moisture. Low contamination pressure. The mycelium establishes itself slowly and deeply before the heat arrives. Common failure number 2, softwood. Someone uses pine logs, cedar, fir, lumber scraps from a construction site. Mushroom mycelium doesn't colonize softwood well. The resin inhibits growth. The wood breaks down too slowly. You end up with logs that sit for 3 years and produce nothing. This is not negotiable. You need hardwood: oak, maple, beech, birch, poplar, cottonwood. Trees with dense cambium layers and the right lignin structure for fungal decomposition. Common failure number 3. Indoor-only attempts. Someone sets up a grow tent in their basement, buys pre-colonized blocks from a supplier, harvests one flush. Then the blocks dry out or contaminate, and the person gives up. Indoor blocks are fine for a quick test or urban situations, but they're not infrastructure. They're consumables. You buy them, you harvest once, you throw them away. That's not a system. That's renting mushrooms with extra steps. Outdoor log cultivation is the opposite. You inoculate once, the logs produce for 5 to 7 years, they fruit naturally with rain and seasonal temperature swings. No misting timers, no humidity domes. You're working with the environment, not fighting it. Common failure number 4. Single species dependency. Someone inoculates 20 shiitake logs and nothing else. Shiitake fruits in spring and fall. That's it. 4 months of production. 8 months of nothing. By month 6, the person forgets to water the logs. By month 12, they've mentally written off the whole project. The 4-species system solves this. You're getting early wins from oyster and wine cap while the shiitake colonizes. You're getting summer production from lion's mane and lion cap while shiitake is dormant. You've got psychological momentum, tangible proof that the system works long before the full calendar activates. This is not mushroom hunting. This is protein engineering. This system has 4 non-negotiable laws. First law: March inoculation. The mycelium needs cool, moist conditions to colonize without contamination. Spring delivers that. Summer does not. Fall is too late. The mycelium won't have time to establish before winter. March is the window. Early March in Zone 7 and 8, late March in Zone 5 and 6. Miss it, and you're waiting a full year. Second law: hardwood only. Fresh cut within 2 to 6 weeks of inoculation. The cambium layer, the living tissue just under the bark, needs to be alive when you inoculate. Logs that have been sitting for 3 months are already starting to dry out and colonize with wild fungi. You want clean, fresh hardwood. If you're cutting your own, cut in late winter. If you're sourcing from a tree service or arborist, ask for logs cut within the past month. Third law: shade placement. Direct sun dries out the logs. The bark cracks. The mycelium dies. Deep shade under a dense canopy slows fruiting. The mushrooms need light as a trigger. Dappled shade is the sweet spot. North side of a fence. Under a deciduous tree that leaves out in late spring. Below a deck. Anywhere you've got partial light and protection from afternoon sun. Fourth law: moisture management. Mushroom mycelium needs consistent moisture to colonize and fruit. In a wet spring, nature handles this. In a dry spell, you handle it. Once a week, you're out there with a hose, giving the logs a deep soak. Not a sprinkle, a soak. 10 to 15 minutes of water until the bark is saturated. Before a fruiting cycle, you submerge the logs for 24 hours. Shock them with water. That triggers the flush. Here's the evidence density. Each shiitake log gets 20 to 50 plug inoculation points, depending on log size. A 4-foot log, 6 inches in diameter, takes about 40 plugs. You drill holes 6 inches apart in a diamond pattern. Offset the rows so the mycelium spreads evenly. You hammer in the spawn plugs. You seal each one with cheese wax or beeswax to lock in moisture and prevent contamination. 50 logs with 40 plugs each gives you 2,000 inoculation points. That's 2,000 entry vectors for mycelium to colonize the wood and start producing mushrooms. Think about it. Average yield per shiitake log per flush is half a pound to 1 pound. 2 flushes per year. That's 1 to 2 pounds per log annually. Oyster logs yield higher per flush, 2 to 3 pounds, but they fruit less predictably. Lion's mane averages 1 to 2 pounds per log per year. Wine cap beds produce 10 to 20 pounds per 100 square feet per season. Run the math. 50 logs across 4 species. Conservative estimate, 50 to 100 pounds of fresh mushrooms per year. Aggressive estimate, with good conditions and experienced management, 100 to 150 pounds. Now let's build it. March, year 1. Your sourcing logs, 4 to 6 inches in diameter, 3 to 4 feet long. Oak is ideal for shiitake and lion's mane. Maple works for everything. Birch and poplar are great for oyster. You need 15 to 20 logs to start. If you're cutting your own, you're doing it in late February or early March. If you're sourcing from a tree service, you're calling in February and asking for fresh hardwood logs from recent jobs. Most arborists are happy to drop off a truckload for free. They're paying to dump it otherwise. You've got your logs, you've got your spawn. Shiitake plug spawn, oyster plug spawn, lion's mane plug spawn. You're ordering from a reputable supplier. It ships cold. It arrives in 1 to 2 weeks. You store it in the refrigerator until you're ready to inoculate. You've got your drill with a 5/16" bit, the exact size for standard plug spawn. You've got your wax melting pot and cheese wax or beeswax. You've got your mallet for hammering in the plugs. You drill holes 6 inches apart in a diamond grid pattern. Offset rows. You're drilling about 1 inch deep, not through the log, just into the sapwood. You hammer in the plugs, flush with the bark, not sticking out. You melt the wax and dab it over each plug with a small brush or stick. Seal it completely. This prevents contamination and holds moisture. You repeat this for every log. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes per log once you've got a rhythm. You stack the logs off the ground. Pallets work, cinder blocks work, anything that keeps them from sitting in mud. You stack them in a crisscross pattern. This allows airflow, prevents rot. You place them in dappled shade. You water them deeply, a full soak. Then you wait. You water once a week if it doesn't rain. You watch. You're not growing mushrooms yet. You're growing a mycelium network inside the wood. By fall of year 1, 6 to 9 months after inoculation, your shiitake logs start pushing out their first flush. Small mushrooms at first, a handful per log. This is the moment, the first psychological win. You're harvesting protein you didn't buy. You're eating mushrooms that came from dead wood and your own labor. This is the proof that keeps you committed. You harvest when the caps are still slightly curved, before the gills fully expose. You twist them off at the base. You soak the logs again. You wait 6 to 8 weeks. You get another flush. Year 2. March comes again. Your shiitake logs are fully colonized now. Your oyster logs are starting to fruit. You've got your first wine cap bed producing in the summer. Your lion's mane logs are colonized and waiting for warm weather. By summer of year 2, you've got a full calendar. Shiitake in the spring, wine caps in June and July, lion's mane in August, oyster in the fall, shiitake again in October and November. You're not buying mushrooms anymore, you're harvesting them. Now let's talk about scaling this system for different situations. You've got a standard suburban backyard. You can run 20 to 50 logs easily, stack them along your fence line, under your deck, on the north side of your garage. You've got a small urban yard or a patio. Container oyster blocks work. You buy pre-colonized blocks from a supplier. They fruit in 7 to 10 days, 1 flush per block. Not infrastructure, but it gets you into production while you figure out log access. You've got an HOA that freaks out about visible log piles. Wine cap beds solve this. Wood chip mulch around your trees, along your garden paths. It looks like landscaping. It produces 10 to 20 pounds of mushrooms per 100 square feet every summer. Spiral stacking is the density solution. Instead of spreading logs horizontally, you stack them vertically in a tower. Same ground footprint as 4 logs laid flat. Triple the production. You build a cylinder of logs, crisscrossed and braced with stakes. It works. It's space efficient, and it creates its own microclimate. The center stays moist. The outer logs get airflow. Here's the indigenous observation piece. You're not managing this system with timers and sensors. You're watching. Logs near your downspout fruit more reliably because they get passive moisture. That tells you where to place the next batch. The north side of your fence stays cool and shaded. Shiitake loves it. That tells you where to concentrate your shiitake logs. Spent logs after 5 to 7 years don't go to the landfill. You break them apart and use them as mulch. They've been colonized by beneficial fungi. They've been broken down into humus. They feed your garden beds. They close the nutrient loop. You're not extracting resources, you're cycling them. Now let's talk about the return. Setup cost for a 20-log starter system. Logs are free if you cut them or source them from a tree service. $40 for plug spawn? You need about 800 plugs for 20 logs. $20 for wax and a cheap drill bit? Total investment? $60 to $80. Annual yield from 20 logs, conservative estimate, 20 to 40 pounds of mushrooms. Shiitake sells for $8 to $12 per pound at the grocery store. Oyster is $6 to $8 per pound. Your yield is worth $160 to $400 per year at grocery prices. Over a 5-year log lifespan, that's $800 to $2,000 in value. Return on investment? 1,000 to 2,500% over the life of the logs. Think about it. Scale it to 50 logs. $80 setup. 50 to 100 pounds annually. Value? $400 to $800 per year. Over 5 years? $2,000 to $4,000. ROI? 2,500 to 5,000%. And that's assuming you're valuing your harvest at grocery store prices. But you're not buying from the grocery store. You're eating protein you didn't pay for. You're feeding your family food that didn't come with a receipt. That's a different kind of return. That's sovereignty. The philosophical rewards don't show up on a spreadsheet. You walk out to your log pile in October and harvest 3 pounds of shiitake. You didn't drive anywhere. You didn't swipe a card. You didn't worry about supply chain delays or price hikes. You picked mushrooms from a system you installed 2 years ago. That's food security. You're teaching your kids where protein comes from, not a plastic package, a living system. They see the mycelium. They see the fruiting bodies. They understand decomposition and biology in a way no textbook delivers. That's education. You lose your job, the economy crashes, inflation doubles food prices. Your mushroom logs don't care. They keep producing. That's resilience. The taste difference is undeniable. Fresh shiitake from your logs versus grocery store shiitake that's been sitting in a cooler for a week. It's not close. Yours has flavor, texture. It tastes like food. Theirs tastes like wet cardboard. You'll notice it the first time you cook with your own harvest. Climate adaptability. This system works in USDA zones 4 through 9. Zone 4 and 5, the cold zones, emphasize cold-tolerant oyster strains. Protect your logs in deep winter with a tarp or straw bale windbreak. Reduce lion's mane. It struggles below 0. Zones 6 and 7, temperate zones. Run all 4 species exactly as described. This is the sweet spot. Zone 8 and 9, warm zones. Shift to heat-tolerant oyster varieties. Increase your wine cap beds. Shiitake will slow down in the summer but still produces in fall and spring. Adjust the species mix. Don't abandon the system. Stacked benefits beyond protein. Spent mushroom logs are rich in decomposed organic matter. When they're done fruiting, you're adding them to your compost or breaking them apart as mulch. They build soil. Lion's mane supports cognitive function. Shiitake has immune-boosting polysaccharides. Oyster mushrooms help manage cholesterol. You're not just eating protein, you're eating medicine. After the initial setup, your only recurring cost is time. 30 minutes a week for watering and harvesting. No fertilizer, no pesticides, no purchased inputs. This system feeds itself. You've stopped renting protein from Walmart. You're not a consumer waiting for the weekly sale on chicken breasts. You're a producer. You've stopped being dependent on a supply chain that can break at any moment. You've started being resilient. You're not a person who gardens as a hobby. You're a systems architect who builds food security infrastructure. The March window is closing. 4 to 6 weeks depending on your zone. Early March in zones 7 and 8, late March in zones 5 and 6. You need to order spawn now. It ships in 1 to 2 weeks. It needs refrigeration until you use it. You need to cut your logs now or call tree services and arborists this week. Ask for fresh hardwood from recent jobs. Most will deliver free. You've got drill bits to buy, wax to source, but the total cost is still under $100 for a system that produces for 5 to 7 years. Miss this March and you're waiting until next year. Summer inoculation fails. Fall is too late for colonization before winter. One missed March is $2,400 you'll keep spending on grocery store protein. One missed March is another year of dependence when you could be building independence. One missed March is 12 months of production you will never harvest. This is not a mushroom hobby. This is infrastructure for your family's future. Install these logs this March. Come back in 9 months, not to thank me, to tell others what you're harvesting from your own protein system.